Okay, this will be a video about Erika Kirk and the incredibly strange, very intriguing mystery surrounding her. And when you hear Erika Kirk, you probably think of the Erika Kirk on the left there, who's everywhere. She was the wife of Charlie Kirk, who was recently assassinated. She's been all over the news for the past couple months, but we're going to be focused this video on this Erika Kirk, who is a completely different person. This Erika Kirk was First Lady of Florida in the 1960s and 70s, and she was married to the Florida governor, whose name was Claude Kirk. And this Claude Kirk was basically just a total animal, just this really larger than life type guy who was governor of Florida from 1967 to 1971 and was even mentioned as a vice presidential and even a presidential candidate. And this is just insanely weird. There's no other way to put it because, as you can tell, they have the same name. They both look identical. There's definitely something very strange going on here. I'll kind of get into what I think is going on a little later in the video, but first wanted to tell the story of the 1960s and 70s Erika Kirk because it's a real interesting story and she was regarded as this real woman of mystery. So when Claude Kirk was elected governor of Florida in 1966, he was single. He was actually called the most eligible bachelor in Florida at the time. And when he had his inauguration ball in January of 1967, after he took office, he shocked all of Florida when he showed up to the ball with a woman. And this girl was just a total mystery. No one knew who she was. No one had ever seen her with Claude Kirk before. And when he introduced her to people, he just referred to her as Madam X. And there was just all these massive stories about who was this mysterious girl who was with Claude Kirk? Who was this Madam X? Everybody wanted to know who she was and where she came from. And the details of her life slowly started coming out. And the details are really interesting. So it turned out her name was Erika Matfeld, and she was born in Germany in 1934, and then she moved to Brazil. And before Claude Kirk, she was married to an actor named Carlos Dolabella. And she worked as some sort of model or actress, although she doesn't really have any credits to her name. There's kind of like a mystery about how she ended up in Brazil and what she was doing there. I'll talk a bit about that later in the video. But anyway, she divorced this actor and remained in Rio de Janeiro, and that was where she met Claude Kirk. And that was pretty much all that was revealed about her. She remained this real enigma, just kind of the talk of the state for a while. And then Claude Kirk announced that they were going to get married. If you can see the date on the newspaper there, it says January 8th, 1967, which is only about 3 days after he took office. So basically, he showed up to the inauguration ball with this mysterious woman, caused a big stir and a big commotion, and then announced he was marrying her. And the wedding happened a short while later. It was a really massive deal. President Nixon attended, and Erika Kirk was basically just this sensation in Florida while Claude Kirk was governor. She was constantly talked about in the press. She really just kind of turned into a big celebrity, and she always kept sort of a low profile. And so there was a lot of mystery surrounding her and their relationship. There was all these articles about how she'd gone from working as a waitress in Germany to becoming the first lady of Florida. This article here kind of sums up what a lot of these articles that talked about her were like. It says, Erika Kirk radiates. Her emerald green eyes actually glow. When she smiles, which is almost always, they shimmer. And Claude Kirk himself was just a real celebrity too. He's described as just this larger than life type guy. He was totally flamboyant, very controversial, very outspoken. Here he is holding up a skinned chicken at a press conference, and he was always doing like really outlandish publicity stunt things like this. There was this huge feature on him in the New York Times after he was elected, and it described him as, quote, it says, as a person, Claude Kirk is a dizzying experience. As a governor, he is certainly the most bizarre happening in Florida's political history. Then it also describes him. It says he played governor the way Errol Flynn used to play Captain Blood. Charming, daring, somewhat arrogant, seldom going by the rules. This article that recapped his first year on the job described how he scuba dived to the bottom of the ocean and planted the Florida flag there. And then he also participated with police in a raid on a motorcycle gang's hangout. And even at one point, he put on a football uniform complete with pads for the University of Florida, and he sat on the bench with the team one Saturday when they were playing a game against Vanderbilt. So he was always doing just all these really outlandish things to garner all this publicity. He was described as just a totally brash, really flamboyant guy, and his story is actually kind of suspicious. He was this really rich guy. He was actually a lawyer, and then he made a bunch of money as a president of an insurance company. And then he abruptly quit and he established some sort of investment firm that had offices in Jacksonville, Brazil, and Ireland. And he spent a lot of time in South America. But the details of what exactly this business was and what he was doing in South America all the time are kind of murky. He was actually questioned a lot about this during the election, and he never really gave much of a straight answer about what his whole South American investment firm was. Obviously, there are a lot of drugs imported from South America through Florida, so you do wonder if something like that was going on. But he eventually ran for governor of Florida in 1966, and he won, and he became the first Republican governor of Florida in 100 years. And he was long rumored to be a candidate for US vice president or even president of the United States. He was really thought of that highly. And anyway, Claude and Erika Kirk had a couple kids while they were in office, and she was just constantly talked about while Claude Kirk was governor. There are so many articles and features out there that were written about her. And then in 1970, Claude Kirk ended up losing his bid for re-election, partially because his 4 years as governor of Florida was just seen as like so chaotic and so lively. He ended up switching to the Democratic Party after this. He ran for governor again in the late 1970s, and he was always mentioned as a potential, presidential candidate or vice presidential candidate. And he actually tried to run for president in 1984, but was unsuccessful. And that was pretty much that. So there are just so many weird things going on here. And obviously, the whole thing with both of these two women being named Erika Kirk and both looking identical to each other, both being in the limelight. I mean, it is really strange, very, very odd. And Charlie Kirk honestly looks like a younger version of Claude Kirk. They definitely had the same, like, very distinct nose. Same facial features. Claude Kirk is much heavier, probably at least about 100 pounds heavier, and he's about 15 years older than Charlie Kirk as well. So the Erika Kirk one is just identical. They're the same age and everything. They match up perfectly there. But all the pictures of Claude Kirk are when he's in his 40s and 50s. He definitely looks a lot like Charlie Kirk, like an older version of Charlie Kirk as well. And the fact that this 1960s Erika Kirk was a German who relocated to Brazil is very, very interesting because there were just a whole bunch of Nazis who relocated to South America after World War II. Just officially, there were tons of them. And there are also rumors that there were just thousands upon thousands more who were living underground or living off the grid. And they even set up a camp there. It was called Colonia Dignidad, and it was allegedly just a whole bunch of like experiments, a lot of works with genetics going on there. It was described as a state within a state, just full of German nationals. And I've mentioned this movie Boys from Brazil a number of times in videos I've made. The plot of the movie is that the bunch of Nazis who went underground in South America are creating a bunch of human clones using Adolf Hitler's DNA in the hopes that one of these clones will grow up to one day lead a resurgence of the Third Reich. And honestly, that's what I think is going on here. Human cloning. I literally just did a video about human cloning. It's my most recent video. It might sound super futuristic and advanced to some people, but it's really not. Human cloning was talked about all the time 50 years ago. All these articles are from the 1970s talking about how being able to clone humans was pretty much imminent. And the process is really not all that difficult. I talked about it in the video. And to be clear, this isn't like creating an adult replica or clone of someone. This is creating an embryo using only the cells from one person that is a replica of that person. And one thing that's always talked about in these articles about human cloning, which again are from like 50 years ago, but one thing that's always talked about is how this technology would enable people to create clones of important people from history, world leaders, famous politicians, people like that, like special people like that. And Claude Kirk, he definitely qualifies as just kind of like a legendary figure. No one ever talks about him anymore. No one probably has any idea who he even was. But if you read about him, he sounds like such an amazing guy, just really larger than life, really unique person. He was, quite literally, he was mentioned as possibly becoming president one day. He was thought of that highly. And the whole similarities with him being a very brash, outspoken, controversial Republican guy, and Charlie Kirk being a very brash, outspoken, controversial Republican guy are very interesting. And the whole Erika Kirk thing is just so strange. This 1960s Erika Kirk, the fact that she went from Germany to South America to the first lady of Florida and just has this like real mysterious background. And then the modern Erika Kirk, she's honestly pretty similar to that too. There's a lot of rumors and questions about her background and what she was up to before she met Charlie Kirk. So this whole thing is just really, really strange, just very, very bizarre how all these details match up, the name, the appearance. I honestly think it could be like a human cloning thing, but I'd definitely love to hear your thoughts in the comments. So let me know what you think. And definitely check out the human cloning video I just did. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll link it in the description. It's definitely not as like far-fetched or futuristic of an idea that as some people might think it is. And then lastly, thanks so much to the supporters here on YouTube and on Patreon. Really means a lot. I truly greatly appreciate it. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon with another video.